I'm just looking out for your best interests. Come on. All right.
No, it's your. If I have to pee, it's your half, and I can just go pee.
That's true. You just fuck off and
I just go, man.
no one will care. Well, don't just go.
Just relax.
I have to clean this carpet up after every show. Remember that. But hello, welcome. Are we streaming to both?
Yes.
Holy crap! Welcome, guys, back to Awesome Hardware, episode 148. This is Side B.
Hi, everyone.
If you missed Side A, you can check it out on Paul's channel, youtube.com/Paul's Hardware. Or you can follow the link in my description. It will be there as well.
It was
It was a great half show. It was a wonderful energy.
Yeah.
We answered lots of good questions from the audience.
We talked about many important
Plenty
things.
of good stories as well. So check that out if you missed it. If not, welcome back. Hey,
but
how's
that
it going?
said,
What?
Kyle actually took all the good stories this week.
I did.
So if you weren't impressed already by my half of the show,
You certainly will be now. This
I mean,
is your reward
the
for sticking around.
The mind-blowing truth bombs that are about to be dropped on your face.
Yep.
Straight from Kyle's asshole right now.
Yep. I'm just
I'm looking
basically
forward to it.
shitting knowledge onto your chest.
Oh, we forgot to do the...
Oh, the disclaimer. We may use adult language from time to time during the stream, and sometimes we forget to say that before we actually start saying those words. So we apologize. We don't usually do that anymore, and now you've been warned, in multiple ways.
Hide your kids, hide your wife.
Yeah.
And
unless your wife's cool with that sort of thing, then bring her along.
My wife is.
We could use a higher female rate anyway. Female viewership. All right. We have stores that we sell stuff in. Mine is bitwit.tech/store.
Feel free to patronize our stores.
The Rip Gamepad shirt is still here.
Look at that.
It's a poor console controller gamepad getting massacred or about to get devoured. It looks like by what I would assume is an RGB mechanical keyboard and looks like a Death Adder, but a gaming mouse essentially.
Of course, these are not directly affiliated with any manufacturer.
Of course not.
And any
nope
coincidental similarities are purely coincidence.
The shirt's opinions are its own.
Yes.
Bottle openers, very nice, and hoodies, shirts, glasses, desk mats. The desk mats have been very popular.
These are lightweight hoodies.
They are super lightweight, good for all weather when it's slightly chilly or just on a regular day. Paul's store is paulshardware.net.
Yes.
He has a brand new oxblood colored thumbscrew logo shirt, which has been doing well so far, and I really like that color. It's very nice.
It's
kind of different. It's dark, kind of like black, but it's a little bit different. Adds a little bit of color to your wardrobe, which I fancy very much.
But not too much. I mean, obviously you don't want to look
not.
like it's all bright and everything's good.
No, fuck that.
Or like you're happy.
Like, oh, wow, look at that happy asshole.
We also got the Heather Midnight. This is also a new addition.
#free Heather.
Heather Midnight.
my wife my wife Heather gets royalties every time you mention her name during one of our plugs, our merch plugs. So one day we'll #free Heather for reals.
3 or 4 things.
And also #free the oxen. That's
3 or 4 things I was about to say there that I didn't. So
glad you didn't.
You're welcome. All right.
Why, thank you. All right, let's move on to hot and heavy hardware.
Okay.
This is our first segment of the night on this half of the show, where we talk about hardware that's hot and heavy.
I'm updating these on the fly.
Our first article talks about some hardware that is not necessarily heavy, maybe kind of hot in certain use case scenarios, but this is the Samsung 970 Pro and 970 Evo SSDs that have been launched. And holy crap, these things are awesome. This is an article from PC Gamer. These are like the leading, best-in-class NVMe drives that you can get on the market right now. Or I should say the 960s, were the 960 Evo and 960 Pro. And a lot of competitors were trying to top those in terms of performance. And it looks like the only manufacturer to have topped Samsung when it comes to the NVMe M.2 game is Samsung. Because now they have the 970 series, and these things are even faster than the last generation. Let's talk about it.
Is it coincidence that... So you're right, the 960 Pro has maintained...
Yeah.
It's like if you want the fastest M.2 NVMe drive, that's what you get. Yeah. But just recently, I think within the past month, we talked about Western Digital coming out with their WD Black, which, while not quite as fast as the 960, was in the ballpark.
Yes.
Pretty close.
Right. It definitely didn't dethrone it, but it made for a very competitive alternative.
And it was, I believe it was cheaper.
Yes.
So, is there any correlation between the WD Black drive coming out, and then suddenly Samsung's like, oh, we got the 970 now?
I feel like that WD Black drive came out way too soon for the 970s to just pop up.
Okay.
I feel like for a big company like Samsung, they've probably been working on the 970 ever since the 960s released. So I think this has definitely been, it's not like a rushed launch or anything that we've seen from like Intel on their CPU side.
That would make sense, unless you're like me, and you believe that Samsung has just had this lined up and they've just been sitting on it. They're like, once we have competition, we'll go ahead and launch.
Yeah, they could be sitting on it. If they're head of the market, then what's really the point? They have no need to launch a new product if they're still number one. So that's a fair argument as well. Maybe they were already in development with the 970, was already ready to go, but their finger was on the trigger, waiting for some slight competition to roll in before pulling it.
To clarify, I have zero basis in fact or
he works for Samsung.
Anything for saying any of that stuff.
Paul works for Samsung part-time.
I just do often think it's interesting when you see competing products and the timing of the launch of certain ones. Okay.
It's all a game. It really is all a chess game when it comes to these manufacturers. I mean, we can't really relate because we don't really, our business model doesn't surround products and selling products to a consumer base. It's like content, which is different.
When you play the game of chess, you win or you die.
Or you... It's very intense, Paul.
It's Game of Thrones,
actually. This is a good quote. Very intense for SSD talk, though. So what's new with these SSDs? You get a new Phoenix controller, same one that's been found in Samsung's current client SSD and their enterprise SSD, the PM981 and PM983, respectively, which probably no real gamer is going to be interested in. But the same powerful controller is built into these that was not available in the last gen 960 drives. The speeds have also been improved. The 970 Pro is pretty crazy. It's got 3,500 megabytes per second sequential reads and 2,700 megabytes per second sequential writes. The 70 Evo, the fucking 970 Evo, has the same read speeds as the 970 Pro, but has only slightly lower sequential write speeds at 2,500. So that's a pretty good bargain. Up to 30% higher sequential writes than the last generation of drives.
Huh.
5-year warranty, or up to 1,200 terabytes written, which is 50 times higher than the last generation. So the write endurance of these drives has been much improved according to the spec sheet. And they will be available up to 1 terabyte for the 970 Pro and up to 2 terabyte for the 970 Evo, which is interesting because the 970 Pro, or I'm sorry, the 960 Pro, last generation Pro series of NVMe drives, was available in 2 terabytes. I stuck 2 of them in the N through Elite build that I did last year.
You did.
But now they've sort of switched the roles, so if you want the higher capacity drive, you're going to be looking at the 970 Evo, not the Pro. Pro's only going up to 1 terabytes now. And you can get that 1 terabyte 970 Pro for $629, and the 2 terabyte 970 Evo for a whopping $849, which is 43 cents per gigabyte. Not the highest cost per gigabyte we've seen, but that is still significantly more than what a mechanical drive would cost you.
I was going to point actually to the lowest SKU on this stack.
Very reasonable.
250 gig 970 Evo for $120.
Very reasonable.
I mean,
that puts the 960.
A 250 gig range SSD will cost you 80 to 90.
Yeah.
So that's only another $30 premium over that to get yourself like one of the fastest NVMe drives out there.
Right.
I see this being a popular core like operating system drive for higher end builds going forward.
I'm sure you'll definitely see these drives popping up in future builds from both Paul and I. But these are going to be available May 7th, so keep your eyes out for those. Let's move on to our next article, which is from Hexus.net. AMD has added some new APUs to their lineup, including the Ryzen 3 2200GE and the Ryzen 5 2400GE. which basically is the same type of parts that we've seen already released, except it's got an E at the end. The E...
So there's an advertising tie-in with General Electric.
No, this has nothing to do with that brand.
But GE.
Or name. No, Paul. It's the same old G.
They bring good things to life.
The G stands for great, and the E stands for efficiency.
Great efficient. Oh, really?
No, I don't know. I don't. Oh, well, the E, yes, but the G I pulled that out of my ass.
The E does stand for efficiency?
Yes, that's what it says in the article. The E suffix stands for efficiency. Oh. So these are lower TDP chips than their counterparts, which is just the G SKU, the non-E SKU, Ryzen 3 2200G and Ryzen 5 2400G APUs that launched earlier this year, just a month or two ago. So these are based on the same APUs with slightly lower clock speeds. There's been some silicon binning in order to achieve that 35 watt TDP versus 65 watt on the counterparts. Ryzen 3 2200GE sports 4 cores, no SMT, so no thread, not more than any 4 threads, it's just 4 cores, doesn't have 8 threads or anything. 3.2, thank you very much, 3.2 gigahertz base, 3.6 gigahertz boost, as opposed to 3.5 and 3.7 on the non-E SKU, with the same Vega 8 GPU, running 8 cores at 1100 megahertz. And then the Ryzen 5 2400GE has 4 cores and 8 threads, very much like the Ryzen 5 2400G non-E SKU. Slightly lower clock speeds, as I mentioned, 3.2 gigahertz base, 3.8 gigahertz boost. That's, let's see, that is 0.4 gigahertz. That's 400 megahertz slower on the base clock than the non-E SKU, and just 100 megahertz slower for that turbo boost there. Vega 11 graphics with 11 cores running at 1250. That's the same speed. The GPU is running at the same speed as the non-E 2400G. So price and availability is TBD, but these are officially on the map. They're on the grid. This has been reported on AMD's own website. So these are real chips that are coming soon. We'll be seeing these probably bundled with I don't know, with some kind of cooler, I would imagine. Wraith Spire, Wraith Stealth, and yeah, new APUs. Probably Wraith Stealth for being a 35 watt TDP chip for sure. So
basically same
APUs.
Specs as the 2200G and 2400G, but lower frequencies in order to hit the lower TDP of 35 watts?
Yep.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I imagine those might be useful for some people.
Yeah, maybe some small form factor HTPCs that don't really have the room in them for a decent cooler. Maybe you can only get away with like a 45 millimeter tall cooler or something like that.
I was going to suggest actually what I will probably be using a Ryzen APU for soon, which is a
Pornhub
machine, basically.
Well, that's just porn. It's great. You've always had great taste.
No, for
PC
for a FreeNAS server.
That was, yeah.
There are Ryzen motherboards that support ECC memory, and so it's a very viable, lower cost solution for something like a FreeNAS server.
True.
So my question would be, when these new lower TDP CPUs will... I mean, the other thing is, like, you could buy a 2200G or 2400G and underclock it and get effectively the same thing. These are just shipping from the manufacturer with those speeds enabled.
Right.
So there you go. But yeah, I will be doing a FreeNAS builds.
Nice.
With Ryzen soon. So
nice.
Cool.
I'll probably be doing a server build soon too, whenever I get around to it. We'll see. Intel. Crimson Canyon Nook has been spotted in benchmarks, in photos. This is also from Hexus, sorry. Photos and details have been leaked by German website WinFuture. And Twitter user Tum API SAK also benchmarked one of these guys. The Crimson Canyon Nooks will be first of their kind to use the Cannon Lake U processors. But even more cool, they'll also be the first Nooks to have a discrete GPU, which is something I've been waiting for a long time, believe it or not. It'll have a Radeon 550 mobile GPU with 2 gigs of GDDR5.
Oh.
Isn't that cool? Now, obviously, this won't compete with something like the Hades Canyon that just came out, featuring a Core i7 processor and Vega graphics, but it will be much much more affordable than Hades Canyon, and it'll still make, hopefully, for a decent HTPC/light gaming system in a super small form factor. The great thing about the Nux is you can literally place them anywhere.
They're very tiny.
They're so tiny. They're literally...
This looks to be maintaining the same very tiny form factor. This looks almost smaller. Oh, Kyle has one.
I just couldn't resist having one just right here. This is how small a Nook is. And you can literally place it behind your monitor, mount it there. It actually does come with a bracket, I believe, if you want to like mount it more securely. And they're also very serviceable, so you can get in there and swap out your memory, put in an M.2 NVMe SSD if you so choose, which is very cool. Very, very, very cool little devices, and they're starting to get more advanced. This one has USB 3.1 Type C.
It's fancy.
Remember the first Nux?
What's the yellow one?
I believe
that's for audio.
That might be 3.1, and that's 3.
Oh, really?
I could be wrong. I'm not sure exactly what the yellow indicates, but they're nice little systems. They're just so compact.
It's like there's really a difficult. It's hard to argue building like a budget small PC for your parents versus
when
just
that's available.
Getting them something like this.
Yeah. And I really like the fact that you can buy them either kitted out or completely bare bones if you want to add your own stuff. That's super nice.
Even have some upgradability and flexibility and stuff.
Yep. Moving on, we've got the MSI Mag Pylon chassis. So MSI is making cases now. Holy crap.
Huh.
And not just cases for their pre-built systems that we've seen in the past, but these are just like standalone chassis for the gaming community. These are released under their gaming gear line, which is the first I've heard of it. The Mag Pylon is for high... There's two cases here. The Mag Pylon for the high-end class and the Mag Bunker for the more budget-oriented users. So first talking about the high-end Mag Pylon, we've got 3 4mm thick tempered glass panels on the front, left, and right of the case. So triple tempered glass. Fits up to ATX motherboards with dual 3.5-inch or dual 2.5-inch drive bays.
45 liters, Kyle.
45 liters.
Imagine how much soda you could fill this case with.
I don't have to imagine, Paul. I already know that it's exactly 45 liters. But
if you're buying 2 liters, though, you'll be stuck with an extra liter of soda.
You'll just have to something to keep in mind.
That'll probably come up in the reviews.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've also got 3 front Mystic Light configurable RGB fans, which are motherboard supported. Yay, RGB fans are always great. I'm wondering if these are kind of like OEM fans that MSI's just slapped their branding on, or if they actually made these fans in-house. I'm very curious about that.
I'd have low expectations.
Me too. Magnetic dust filters, of course, vertical GPU support, lol, and then the Mag Bunker for budget-oriented system users. There's no integrated fans on this one. There's no RGB. There's only a front and left tempered glass side panel, so there's no front panel. I'm sorry, there's no right panel.
Where's the bunker? I don't see the bunker.
That might have been in the corner of shame that they did not care to include. But there's only a single 120mm non-RGB fan at the rear. No pricing or availability is listed for these cases. I don't think they look bad. At least from first glance, at least the Mag Pylon, which is the only case that they're really showing us right now. But from what the article says, the case and frame itself is very similar. So I don't think the Mag Bunker looks much different than the Mag Pylon, apart from like the included fans and the tempered glass panel on the right. So, there's Mag Bunker right there.
Found the bunker.
Yeah. So you can see it's kind of like add your own fans type of thing, which I think a lot of users go for these days, right? Fans have come so far with RGB and all that shit that fans are a very personal thing that people are very particular about now. So yeah, go for the bunker if you don't care about the right side panel having glass. It's probably not a big deal for most people. Save some money there. So yeah, MSI cases. I mean, you know what's weird? Did you see any pictures of the actual internal layout? Like without the side panel removed?
Just this 45 liter.
Just that, which is still kind of hard to see. It looks like they've got 2 rows of rubber grommets, which is cool for cable management, I guess.
Here and here.
But why the second row on the right if it's only supporting ATX motherboards? The ATX board's going to stop before that first row of first column of grommets.
You're right.
Kind of just interesting. Like,
these grommets are useless.
Right. I'm just wondering why. I've never seen that in a case that only supports ATX boards. So,
But hey, you got vertical GPU support.
Vertical GPU support. I'm hoping that it's further back away from the tempered glass side panel and not just like right up against it. Kind of defeats the purpose.
What is this?
It looks like it does include the adapter and riser card, riser cable.
It's like the holder thing or something.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
It's interesting.
Well, MSI.
They make cases now.
You make cases
MSI, world-renowned case manufacturer. That's definitely news for today. Moving on, though, to our last article for hot and heavy hardware, CryoRig has released their C7 copper cooler. This is an article from Tech Report. Now, I remember checking out the copper line of coolers from CryoRig at last year's Computex, being pretty impressed. And also very curious just to see how these would perform. Apparently, they've replaced their original C7 heatsink with all copper material. So obviously, copper is more heat conductive than aluminum, which is what their regular model is using. And so that can potentially give you up to a 15% thermal performance increase over the standard version, according to CryoRig. 15% better thermal performance compared to its own standard aluminum C7 model. You still get 4 6mm wide heat pipes. There's a low profile heatsink. And when I saw the CryoRig booth, when I went to the CryoRig booth at last year's CES, last year's Computex, they had not just the C7, but they had like all their big coolers, the H7. They all had like copper versions of them. But I think the C7 particularly makes a lot of sense to go full copper because anyone purchasing a C7 most likely has very limited Z space in their case for a CPU cooler, which means you can't just add more fins. You can't just add more heat pipes to the equation when you're limited on space. The one thing that you can change and have control over is the materials you use for the thermal dissipation. So if you're using copper instead, you can maintain the same slim size, very short size, height, Z height of this cooler, still fit it into like an N case or something like that, but have greater cooling potential to potentially fit in a higher end CPU. So I'm very curious to see how this thing performs, if the 15% claim is accurate. I think this is definitely worth testing. I'll keep my eye on this guy. And of course, there is a price premium here, right? Using copper materials is going to be a lot more expensive, even on a 57 fin array like this one, than, say, an aluminum equivalent. So we're actually jumping from the original C7, which was $30 MSRP, to now $50.
$50.
It's quite a bit more for such a slim profile. But you know what? Right now, mini ITX, like super small, tiny mini ITX small form factor builds are all the rage. And more specifically, small form factor but high performance systems are increasingly popular. So I think this is a niche product. It's a very niche product. But it's a niche product that doesn't have many alternatives. So I'm very curious to see how this works out. And supports AM4 and 11.5X sockets.
You listed quite a few reasons why this is a good starter product for CryoRig with their copper series. I have a couple additions to that.
Okay.
But not from the perspective of use case, but from the manufacturing perspective. Because what it really boils down to here is that a metal like copper costs a lot more money, and this is actually something that I've mentioned once or twice before. I'm not sure in what context, but if you go back to the mid 2000s, like 2005, 2006, 2007, there was a trend that came about with graphics cards, which was
copper.
Graphics cards went from being single slot GPUs to double slot. They realized, like, oh, let's just use another slot and make the cooling solutions a lot beefier in order to accommodate GPUs that output a lot more heat. But they started just throwing copper into that. If you look at
the whole heat sinks?
Yeah, the entire heat sink, all the fins, was all made of copper. If you look at like old Radeon HD like 5870s and stuff like that, you can see these old designs where it's like a red PCB and they're just a massive copper, like there's heat pipes and there's a heat sink and like over everything. And then in 2008, the global economy collapsed and the price of precious metals like gold, like the things that have sort of less elastic pricing, went way up because those suddenly became some of the most viable things that you could invest money into. So the global economy affected the design of stuff like heat sinks for graphics cards. And suddenly you went from all copper designs to like, all right, let's put a copper contact plate and everything else aluminum, a much cheaper metal. So
sure,
my thought, all that makes my thought about this be like, all right, this is the smallest CPU cooler that CryoRig makes. So if they want to test the waters and be like, all right, are people willing to pay extra for this? Because that's really what it boils down to. This is $20 more than the aluminum version. Are people willing to pay more for the additional heat dissipation that this is going to provide? And is, are we going to be able to charge enough money more, enough dollars more for these coolers that will account for the increased cost of the copper that they have to pay for?
Right.
Because there's a base bill of materials cost for the copper. So from the business perspective, this cooler also makes a lot of sense because they're able to put this on the market with a fairly minimal investment when it comes to the amount of copper that they actually have to buy.
Yeah, it's a smaller heat sink for sure. It's more feasible for everyone.
Just wanted to throw that out there too.
And no one's gonna like buy an H7 for like $100, right? If it's all copper,
probably not.
As good as it might be, no one's gonna pay. It's all
gonna be like, how well do they cool compared to like the high-end Noctua coolers? Because
that's always the standard.
Yeah. If you can somehow outperform an NHD 15, then you'll probably have some people interested in your cooler.
True.
But nice. I do imagine, like you said, for small form factor builds, this would probably be pretty useful.
Yeah, I'd like to put an 8700K under this thing and see how it does.
I'd probably get pretty toasty, but I'm sure it would do its best.
Just for the lulz.
Yes. Okay.
All right, let's move on to our next segment, which is Pimp My PC. You guys have submitted pictures and specs of your beautiful rigs, or maybe not so beautiful rigs, and are anxiously awaiting Paul and I to tell you what you've done wrong, how to rectify and redeem yourselves for the bad, horrible PC builders you are. No, you're probably just fine, but we can help you out a little bit and get things up to speed with your dilapidated systems. First up, we've got that guru. That guru with a bunny with chainsaw. It's very hazardous profile picture there. NZXT S340 with a Ryzen 2700X, like that. We have a nice second-gen Ryzen chip already here in this build.
This is a new build.
Asus X470F. 16 gigs of Corsair RGB 3600 megahertz, Samsung 960 EVO, 250 gig for the boot, a couple other drives there, and an Asus R9 380X OC. Gonna do more upgrades when the new GPUs come out. Good to know. All right, Guru, let's see. Very clean. Cable management is on point. Obviously, some custom sleeved cables would do you favors in that department.
But the black looks fine.
Black looks fine. But if you would have wanted a little bit, I'm just saying. I would take the sticker off of my SSD and just make that SanDisk drive blend in completely with the basement.
All black?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I would definitely go that route. I really like the Corsair fans at the front with the white trim. Maybe employ one of those at the rear. Replace that stock NZXT fan there.
Could balance things out a bit.
I
want to say whatever wire this is right here is standing out to me.
Oh wow, I didn't even notice.
It's coming out across the heatsink, and I don't know where it's going. This might be the wire from this rear exhaust fan just being routed over here to plug into a fan header that's down in here.
I see that cable on the right above the fan. I think that's from the Wraith Prism.
You sure? It could be. Either way.
You don't see that cable? What's that cable from?
I think this is the fan cable coming up, going back, and then being brought out back here to plug into a fan header that's down in here.
Oh, somewhere. I see. You think it's going back around?
Because I think the Wraith Prism just has this one plug coming out right here.
Oh, maybe you're right.
But I could be wrong about that. Either way, this cable is just standing out a little bit to me. Tuck that away somewhere.
Yeah, you can tuck it where the fan cable is from your Wraith Prism. Yeah, see how you kind of put it right between those heat sinks
together.
Put it between the heat sinks.
But really minor critiques. This is a very clean looking build. I don't think there's a whole lot more that could be done here without new hardware, and you have new hardware, so don't worry about it. You're good.
Right.
Well done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, Guru. Next we have Tim. Mr. Tim.
Thermaltake View 71 RGB case. The EVGA X299 dark motherboard, an i9-7900X running at 4.6 gigahertz, an EK Supremacy Evo X99 water block, EK420 CE radiator, 32 gigs of Corsair Vengeance LPX 2400 megahertz RAM, 2 EVGA 1080 Ti for the Win 3 hybrids SLI graphics cards, 2 1TB Samsung Evo 850 SSDs, the 2TB Seagate Barracuda hard drive, and a 1200 watt EVGA Supernova power supply. All right. Wow. Wow. I read all those specs before looking at the picture, and I'm kind of glad I did.
I would start by making your bed.
What? The bed.
Your bed just looks so messy.
Where's the bed?
Right?
Oh, the bed over here?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have any, like, sheets on there. Like, the blankets, like, all
It might be a couch.
Then you need to make your couch.
I'm not sure. All right.
Okay, but based on the PC, what are you thinking, Paul? First impressions.
Okay. So, your liquid tubing runs are kind of tortured. That's what I'm seeing here. Cabling actually looks pretty good if we're just looking at the cabling. Like your 24-pin, you got some nice clean cables coming up here for your graphics power, but we have flexible tubing not only in the hybrid GPUs, which I'm completely aware this is probably the only viable place that you could put these, at least to have any sense of symmetry. I mean, you could have put one on the rear exhaust here maybe, but that might be awkward. Those seem very stretched to me, and then the clear tubing for the CPU going through there is just visually, it's not working for me at all. Just not at all.
I'm with you on that.
Functionally, again, you probably have a really cool and quiet running system here, which you can put the side panel on and not look at and be perfectly happy with.
The best way to solve this is hardline.
Yeah.
Go hardline.
Hardline, I don't.
Because then you'll be able to actually plan out the runs, whereas the flexible tubing from where everything's placed at, if you weren't changing the location of anything like your reservoir or your radiator, the only real way to make things look a lot cleaner would be, or the best way to make it look cleaner would be to do some hardline runs. And obviously you'd have to get some new fittings for that if that's an investment that you're willing to make. I think it could do wonders for your system and get it looking like almost like a show rig, because it has a lot of potential. You got an SLI configuration. It's pretty beefy and stuff. Everything else is really clean except for the water cooling runs. That's the one thing that I would change. And also, it's interesting that you have the fans for your GPU radiators set to intake.
They're set to intake, and he also removed the labels on them.
I'd be curious to see what kind of temps you'd get if you flipped the fans and made them exhaust. It might not affect much, but I think it'd be worth a try.
Yeah, it could. I
I just don't know how good the ventilation is on the other side of those radiators to be pulling air in from. Do you know what I mean? Like, do you usually leave the back side panel off? Is that the thing? Is that the factor that I'm missing? Is that you usually just don't have the right side panel on, and so that the fans are able to intake air more efficiently?
If he modded like a dust filter or something over there, then that might be a really practical solution. So,
assuming he modded the side panel, yeah.
Yeah. So,
but nothing indicates that he did.
So Tim, I think what it comes down to for me is you have some aesthetic stuff here that really just doesn't work out, but you also probably have a very functional system. So if it's at all important to you where looks are concerned and you have a few $100 extra lying around, then maybe some of our suggestions would help.
Someone's saying that you can get intake or exhaust out of the right side of that case, which I still haven't really pinpointed what case this is, but if people in chat are vouching for the fact that you can still have some ventilation on the right side, then maybe you're fine with the fans the way they are.
I think the rear view of this with the cable management is actually the best looking
prettier side
part of this system.
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
This is really well done back here.
Yeah,
very clean with all that stuff going on and everything.
What case is this?
I don't know. Does he list it? Thermaltake View 71.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Tim, I feel like we've either made your day or like we've sent you into an existential crisis or something.
Hopefully,
like that,
we've given you the push you need to venture into hardline, the hardline world.
Hardline or
no hardline.
What can you do with these hybrids though? Like, there's nothing that can be done about those hybrids without removing the blocks.
Get a different case.
And yeah, I don't know. Oh, all right. Well.
Yeah.
Tim, you have a beastly build, and I'm sure it's insanely powerful. So yeah, well done there. Next up is Jimmy.
i5 4690K with a Corsair H100i, an ASRock Fatality Z97X Killer, Corsair Vengeance Pro 16 gigs, and some drives with a Seasonic 550 watt power supply. Going with the red and black theme here. First thing I notice is that your GPU is in the bottom slot, which is probably an X8 slot, so it probably won't cost you much in terms of performance. But thermally, I feel like your fans are being pushed against that power supply basement a bit more than if your card was in the top by 16 slot. And I don't see why it couldn't be installed in that top slot. I would probably put it in that top slot. Better airflow.
So you're
able to receive more air from the front intake fans.
He has something going on up here. I can't tell what it is.
Yeah, he's got a couple cards there. There's a couple buy 1, buy 4 cards that I don't know.
No, they're not. These are like expansion cards or something. Because they're not actually plugged into PCI slots.
Oh, you're right. So
are these?
So they're just connected.
These might be part of the killer board. Does the killer board have like extra USB or some other type of I/O slots that you can put down here?
I wouldn't think so.
I'm really not sure what that is.
What could they possibly be for?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a Z97 Fatality board.
If they're not plugged in to those slots, then couldn't he like that? That's even more reason for him to put the GPU up top.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So if you can reposition these further down, they've got some cables going to them wherever they're plugging into, or just get rid of them if they're not necessary. Like, definitely move that graphics card up to this upper slot. It's a better position for it. It's better thermally. If there's any performance difference, it's probably pretty minimal. Like Kyle said, you're probably running it by 8 in this lower slot, but give that graphics card
a bit more air.
all the best opportunity that it can have to do its best.
Yeah, it's working the hardest out of all the components in there.
Yeah.
Besides the CPU maybe, but
beyond that, you got a pretty clean red and black scheme.
Man, remember those old NZXT LED strips or whatever you want to call them that had like the LED every couple inches or whatever?
Oh yeah.
But it was like a sleeved cable. Those were weird.
That's old school.
That's old school.
I will say maybe remove your label from your power supply. And then I also say
power supply. You mean the
I'm
SSD?
sorry, from the SSD. Yeah. Remove the label from the SSD, and then this powered by Seasonic sticker or case badge here it's doing nothing for me.
Not matching really.
I would remove that as well.
I mean, fix those few things though, very slight adjustments, and you'll have a much cleaner looking system, I think, overall.
I agree.
Very nice, Jimmy. Thank you very much.
But you've got a lot of the base components that you need to clean things up. So
yeah.
You're in good shape.
Next up, we've got Nate. It's Super Panda.
Super Panda.
MSI 970 Gaming, FX 6200, H115i, and an R9 390 from XFX with an Antec 900 gaming case. Or no, I'm sorry, Antec 900 gaming power supply with a Rio Toro CR 1280 case. Reviewed last time on Awesome Hardware. If you're pimping it out, then let's make this even more awesome. Okay. The clear stripper fans have to go.
Got the stripper fans up here.
Stripper fans are a no-go.
Wait, we already reviewed this one? This does look vaguely familiar.
Did we?
That's what he said in his tweet. Reviewed last time. I don't know.
Then should we not talk about it?
This does look vaguely familiar. Right? Right? Vaguely familiar?
All right.
Twistiness of the tubing here for the all-in-one cooler.
Oh, yeah, it does. Now that you mentioned the twistiness.
You've got some cable extensions that look fairly clean for the 24-pin, but not quite as good for the 8-pin up here. It looks like it's pinched at the top for some reason. A few stray cables coming from the cooler here, as well as this USB one that's just kind of trailing on down through that area. That doesn't look that nice. Finding a way to reroute that would be a good idea. Same thing for the fan cable down here, and get matching extensions to go for your graphics card as well as the motherboard power supply cable extensions, and then finally get memory that matches, that's red rather than blue, and you'll be in better shape.
I agree with everything Paul said.
Yay!
Thanks, Nate. And Rendon.
I figured out how to do the open image and new tab thing. I'm so happy about that.
Beautiful. This is from my PC. i7 4790, MSI Aero ITX GTX 1070, 16 gigs of Crucial Ballistic Sport, Gigabyte Z97, Gaming 7 motherboard. So it looks like you've got a black and red theme going on here. I would remove the power supply sticker because that never looks all that great. And you've also got a stock Intel cooler. I'm not sure if you were planning to replace that in the future, but I would definitely look into upgrading that because it'll be cooler, it'll be quieter, and it'll look nicer. It's like a really easy upgrade that'll improve 3 huge pillars of your system.
I like how there's 2 pictures
that are just slightly off angle from each other.
These are the 2 pictures.
In case you have a head tilt.
Now here's a situation where, like, I don't want to tell you to go and sell your graphics card because graphics cards are really overpriced right now.
But sell your graphics card.
But this is an ITX graphics card in a full-size case.
Oh yeah, that's a huge case. Fantastic.
So if you got a good deal on it at the time or something like that, like, no blame at all. It's fine. You got a functional graphics card, but
you do you.
All I'm saying is you've got a lot more space here. You could deal with a larger cooler and possibly a graphics card, maybe even of the same exact GPU basis as this one, but that's just better cooled or could overclock a little bit more or something like that.
Right.
But I would only bother with something like that if you could get something that's the same price.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Faux show.
Beyond that, everything Kyle said.
Yep.
All right.
I'm right.
And thanks for the 2 pictures.
Thanks, Brendan. Ken.
There is stuff that could be done
with
here.
With a Noctua fan.
There is stuff that could be done. Like, for instance,
get a black Noctua.
This fan, you've got 2 fans on.
Yeah.
I'm just realizing this This fan is not the stock fan that came with this,
No.
right?
No.
This
That's
should
just
have
a
two
random...
140s.
Yeah.
That looks like a...
He must have put it somewhere else, or...
It looks like a 120 that's been wedged onto there somehow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Point being, both of these fans have been rotated to such an angle that their cables are coming out at the top and on the outer point right here. You could rotate these 90 degrees
towards the back of the case.
so the cable's coming out at the back, and that will help you hide or tuck back behind this cable grommet much of this ugly cable length here.
Yeah.
Also, there just seems to be a general lack of pulling back of loose cables, like up here on the top left.
Right.
You've got some more examples back here. I mean, these cables are going where they need to go. They're not really tied down or that kind of thing very much.
Right.
So that's pretty much needed across the entire build.
I would also remove that whole drive cage that has 4 empty drive slots in it.
This one up here, you can do that.
Just so that you have, just so you have a little bit more airflow going to your card.
Yep, it's a good idea.
GPU. But yeah, everything else looks pretty solid. So
yeah,
well done, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
And thus concludes Pimp My PC. Thank you to everyone who submitted today. Let's move on to some general tech news, starting with some asshole smugglers who used drones ingeniously to sneak $80 million worth of phones into China.
Well,
isn't this interesting?
That is interesting.
This is from Engadget, and this is a big operation. 26 suspects were arrested. 26 people were arrested for using drones to string 2 cables between Shenzhen in southern China and Hong Kong.
Huh.
So they were just trying to use drones to string a couple cables so that they can have like a little pulley system and transport 15,000 phones per night. Every day, 15,000 phones per day across these strings, these cables that were apparently brought across by drones. And this is actually the first known case in China to have employed drones as a part of their smuggling arrangement. Technology. That's a lot of phones, man. That's they've been accused of smuggling 500 million yuan, or approximately $80 million US worth of smartphones with the help of these drones.
But now they've been caught, right?
And now they've been caught. And so they fucked up. It was an unsuccessful heist. And maybe next time they should, I don't know, buy quieter drones.
Is that how they were caught? Were the drones too loud?
It doesn't say, but I would imagine like, security's just like, in China, like, what the fuck is that? That's a loud-ass drone. It's got LEDs on it and shit. Why are you using a DJI Phantom 4 with some red and green LEDs on it?
If you're stringing cables between Shenzhen and Hong Kong, then, like, did a boat run into it or something like that? Like, were the cables...
Maybe it was like a patrol unit on the ocean.
Or were the cables in the water? It's not
perfectly clear. No. I'm guessing the cables were, airborne, were like, pulled taut. There was someone on the other side to receive the drone with the cable that it brought and was able to pull it taut, and they were just,
So are you imagining a cable going, like, hanging...
Right, 2 cables.
5 or 6 feet above, like, the choppy waters
surface
of the waterway between Shenzhen and Hong Kong.
Right.
And then across this line, there's just, like, every foot or so, there's, like, a phone. And they're just kind of slowly, like, moving along the line somehow.
I don't know.
Like,
that's a good question.
That's the visual I get.
I don't know if it's, like, one phone every foot or something like that.
And there's a guy just pulling it like a pulley.
Or maybe it's like a pulley and it's just, like, a couple boxes, like a box of phones.
Yeah.
That they're just, like, we're shipping, like, 100 boxes. Because I can't imagine...
Probably boxes.
Probably boxes.
Because you're probably going to resell the phones.
How are you going to individually...
So the phones are probably packaged.
How are you going to individually... Yeah, right.
So the
the
visual I got there of the line with all the phones hanging from it is probably not very realistic.
You're talking maybe like a hot dog factory.
And yet I'm kind of
digging that.
I'm kind of enamored. I'm kind of enamored with that idea now.
That's how I would smuggle
Seems
phones
cute,
into China.
And yeah. I feel like they should maybe try that out.
Well, you know what? Maybe you should have been a part of them 26 people who got arrested, Paul.
Well, I wouldn't have been arrested.
Maybe they wouldn't have been arrested had you been there.
I'm not that. I don't expose myself like that.
That's right. I hope you don't expose yourself to anyone.
I don't.
Ryzen 5 2600 has been deleted.
I'll be right back.
By Der Bauer. Der Bauer. Hey, he deleted the shit. Look at that. That's a picture of him deleting it. All right, very exciting. He heated up the IHS on the processor to 180 degrees because that is the temperature at which indium melts, which is the solder material that AMD uses for these processors. So once he heated it up, he was able to pop off the IHS. Oh yeah, right there. He was able to pop off the IHS at that temperature, and he replaced the original solder with a high-performance TIM material, thermal interface material. TIM material is redundant. A high-performance TIM, or thermal interface material. And then he mounted a Kraken X62 onto the CPU once it had been deleted, and he overclocked the cores to 4.1 gigahertz at 1.35 volts versus the chip's 3.4 gigahertz base clock. And what he found in a run of Cinebench R15 was that the deleted 2600 dropped just 4 degrees from its non-deleted equivalent. So it went from 64C to 60C, which is not the biggest delid drop we've seen in recent history. So in the video that DeBauer makes and stuff, he says, maybe it's not worth delidding these second-gen Ryzen CPUs for just a few measly degrees difference, because you could potentially damage your CPU while attempting to delid. It's a risky process that, as delidding becomes more popular, a lot of people start to forget those risks, those very real risks of actually damaging your hardware, which can be very traumatizing and costly. So for a couple degrees, DeBauer wouldn't recommend it, but it's also sort of a good job gold star to AMD in the fact that they're already using a pretty good solder material for their core. They're like, you know what I mean? Like, they're doing a pretty good job with the stock sort of material, the solder for cooling these CPUs. Whereas Intel would be a completely different story. Like, go ahead and delid that shit. You'll drop, 15, 20 degrees or whatever, because the stock TIM on Intel CPUs is just really, really weak and measly. So good job, AMD. Thanks, DeBauer, for investigating this topic further. And that's pretty much that. And Paul's back from his duty.
Wasn't a duty, just a pee break.
Okay, just a pee break. Other duty. We can move on to our next story. I already covered this. It's all great.
Was it better or worse?
It was better, but slightly. Not worth the delid. You only dropped 4 degrees. Because the AMD solder is already pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Well.
Stock, unlike
they did make a slide about it. They were like...
They made a slide, yeah.
They were like, look, we soldered our stuff. Not like those crappy Intel. Those
crappy
CPUs.
Tim plebs.
Cool. Well, good to know.
Moving on, this article is I found this on Reddit. Apparently, using a non-stock cooler on your Ryzen CPU will void its warranty. So if you click on that link, it'll take you to the sort of little thread page on AMD's website. Is the warranty for my AMD processor in a box still valid if I use a different heatsink or fan other than the one provided? And they're like, no. The limited warranty shall be null and void if the AMD processor, which is the subject of the limited warranty, is used with any heatsink or fan other than the one provided in the processor in the box. Huh. So this is news to a lot of us, and I guess I kind of want to talk about, like...
Hold on, Kyle. Has this problem been
solved? No, I don't think it has. No. I would like some further explanation. How difficult or easy was it to follow the instructions on this page? Somewhat difficult, or very difficult, because... we would like more information. I feel like that was a very don't bother to advertise unlocked processors, overclockable CPUs. Exactly. If you're going to invalidate the warranty, from doing so. I think that's a very good point, Paul. Is that AMD has very heavily been pushing the fact that all of their CPUs on the AM4 platform are overclockable, but what good is that if they're also going to come back and say, oh yeah, but if you do that, we're going to void your warranty, and we're not going to cover you. We're going to advertise this feature, but we're not going to protect you from using it or utilizing it. So, yeah, it's a dick move. I agree.
One of the other responses on the forums said, "My 1600X didn't come with a heatsink, so this article is literally instructing me to run without a cooler." under a federally illegal threat to void the warranty. Yeah,
which is also true.
There's also like,
I think it's silly.
So there's something with warranties, like a company can write up whatever warranty they want and say like, you voided your warranty if you do this and this,
looked
this
at it
kind
funny.
of stuff.
Yeah.
But there are also I believe federal and state regulations that protect consumers
what can be under warranty
from
or
certain actions by companies.
Right.
I know there's something called the limited warranties of merchantability and fitness, which say that any product that's sold as a new product basically needs to operate for the use it was intended to use. Otherwise, the seller of that product must provide either a replacement of the product or a refund within 30 days.
Sure.
That's pretty standard across the board.
Right.
You can't buy a car and then like the car doesn't drive. Like that's what the car is supposed to do. Like so there's a certain basic level of functionality that's promised based on what the product is.
Right.
And if it doesn't work for that purpose, then you have a basic consumer warranty protection, at least if you're in the United States. I don't know how that operates in other countries. So, yeah, I'm sure there's some limitation to this. But there's also the flip side to that, which is from the company's perspective, businesses, and applies to manufacturers, it applies to retailers. Businesses will often make a statement so that statement is there, even though they're not really planning on ever having to use that statement.
Right.
It can operate as a deterrent for people who might be like, I don't know what to do, so I'm going to ask this, and then I'll make the decision based on that. Or it can be just something that they say as a deterrent, but if somebody were to actually come and try to legally press them on that, then they would be like, actually, no, we'll go ahead and do that. It allows them to, for instance, handle returns on a case-by-case basis, whereas there's a general policy that applies to everything, but there's also, for those people who actually might need to go around that policy, they can make a case-by-case decision on that for them. And different companies handle that different ways, and I don't know if AMD's handling that this way. All I have to say about this is, like, I feel like I've seen stuff like this before, and I probably never have seen someone who's like, I bought a 2600X, and I installed it and then I upgraded the heatsink, and then I tried to RMA it, and then AMD shut me down. The chance, like the
same with overclocking.
The niche number of people, the few number of people that will happen to, AMD will probably just take care of.
Right.
This
doesn't necessarily, and it's weird too, because it's a sort of a forum post that one response might be wholly indicative of AMD's statement.
Yeah.
It might just be one guy who's in charge of responding to that thread, right? So I feel like there could be some further investigation. It might not be super inclusive with everything AMD stands for or with what they feel or believe on this particular topic, but I definitely also feel like, overclocking your CPU for a lot of different products has been a warranty voider, and I don't really hear a lot of people expressing concern that they've had issues RMAing or exchanging their processors that they've overclocked. Because at the end of the day, like, how could AMD or any company really verify that you've used a non-stock cooler with their product?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, how?
Is there any practical way for them to verify?
It's even harder to do it with that, I think, than overclocking.
To my knowledge, like, so for example, if you talk about overclocking and like Intel's warranty, for example, if you look at the actual text of it, if you overclock an Intel processor, I believe there might be newer text on this or whatever, but I believe even the unlocked ones, even the K SKUs,
somewhat covered.
If you overclock it, technically you are not covered under warranty anymore. But to my knowledge, there's no practical means of Intel or AMD validating that. I don't think there is any flag or some sort of writable portion of the processor that can get updated that says this processor has been run at a higher frequency or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any practical way of them doing that. So unless you as a user go and say, here's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
And then they decide that based on that, they should somehow use what you told them to void your warranty, which I don't see them doing either.
No.
So I don't see this affecting people directly.
Right.
But if it is something that comes up that people are seeing as a concerning thing, and hey, if anyone from AMD happens to be watching, this is a reference to a post on their AMD. Is this directly on the AMD Q&A? It's on the AMD site, right? Yeah, so it's directly on the AMD site about is the warrant. It's on their FAQ.
Right.
On the driver and support search FAQ. This question exists.
Yeah.
So AMD maybe updating this with some softer language.
Yeah.
Or just something that indicates like, hey, it's just not a flat no.
Exactly.
Like
there's some gray area here that needs to be addressed.
That might be helpful for people. So.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
We'll see if there's anything more to this in the future.
We'll keep an eye on it. But finally, we have an article from Ars Technica, that's about the Xbox One. Woo! Getting 120 hertz support, perhaps in a May software update. So that's kind of exciting for all you console goers on the Xbox One S or Xbox One X. Microsoft has announced this officially that 120 hertz will arrive in a software update come May, which will prove to give gamers smoother gameplay and responsiveness, very similar to what you might experience on a PC. FreeSync 2, I should mention, was added to the platform earlier this year, thank you, Paul, along with 1440p resolution support. So it seems that Microsoft is trying to push the Xbox One S or X as a good a PC desktop alternative. And I think this is kind of interesting because I feel like as we come along here in society and gaming, the gaming community, that a lot more people are hooking up their consoles to monitors as opposed to TVs, which definitely splits the community a bit. Because there are certain expectations that you might have with a gaming-centric monitor versus a generic, finished good home TV or something like that. So I definitely feel like Microsoft is acting on this trend or this behavior, this new action. So FreeSync 2, we've got 1440p. Now 120 hertz is going to come around. Now bear in mind though that 120 hertz on these consoles will only be supported at 1080p and 1440p resolution because these Xboxes for the current generation only have HDMI 2.0. So it's the limitation of that particular spec, that protocol.
There's also a bit of limitation in the actual graphics processing horsepower.
Exactly. How would you even get to 120 FPS at 4K on something like an Xbox that's running, some sort of special AMD APU?
Playing a game with like 5 textures and yeah. I mean, if you're playing an old enough game, then sure you can play at a really high resolution.
Mm-hmm.
Like, remember
Minecraft.
on my half we showed some Quake 2 gameplay. I bet that
would fly.
The Xbox could easily handle Quake 2
for sure
at 120.
But yeah,
frames per second.
But not like Destiny 2 or something like that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's going to be a long shot for certain titles that are more recent. And it's also worth bringing up that 120 hertz, just because it's supported on the console in general as the platform, doesn't mean that every game you buy from now on this platform is going to support 120 hertz. This is something inherently dependent on the developers of the game to implement into their titles to support and play nicely with the consoles. So, and that's not to say that games that are already out that have not been optimized for 120 hertz will never see 120 hertz gameplay. It's possible that there could be future updates or patches for existing titles that will allow 120 hertz. But you want to keep your eyes on this. If you are an Xbox One S or X gamer, to in any capacity, you want to make sure that that the games you're getting are supporting 120 hertz if that's something that you're interested in, and also bear in mind that you won't be able to get 4K out of that. So that's what's happening with the Xbox, and that's pretty much all the things I have to talk about on my half. So let's just let's dive into some donations. Just dive into donations, man.
Trying to just continue your sentence.
I know. I mean, I'm just trying to get through this, man.
Only vaguely enunciated.
It's okay. People understand my drunken language by now. Carmos, 1970. $10. Hi, Paul and Kyle. Great show. I just got a 2700X on B350, and when I run ADA64, the CPU temps are between 68 and 78C. But something called CPU diode reads 120 plus. Should I be worried? Thanks.
No.
No, that's different.
No, you should not, Carmos.
Yeah.
Depending on the motherboard that you're using, motherboards have different sensors on them. A program like ADA64 will reach out and try to hook those sensors. Usually, the most fundamental sets of sensors, like your CPU temperature and that kind of thing, are usually pretty functional. And I will sometimes go off of other readings when it comes to like VRM temps and that kind of thing with those. But if something is really really running that hot and it's not supposed to, then your system will probably shut down versus it just running at that temperature. So it's probably a misread from the software.
I would also suggest getting an aftermarket cooler if you are getting up to 78C on the 2700X, because these chips are inherently clocked higher than first-gen Ryzen. And the coolers themselves, the stock coolers, are not that much different. Like the Wraith Prism, the real difference between that and the Wraith Max, from what I can tell, is just the RGB. So you're still getting the same TDP rated cooler, but for maybe a slightly warmer running chip. So I would consider it, especially if you're trying to overclock and you're getting 78C, maybe get an aftermarket cooler.
I was surprised that the Wraith Prism uses the plastic tabs to secure. It felt less secure than the other ones that
four screws
mount straight through to the back plate.
It's also simpler, I think, just mounting a simpler mounting process with 4 screws than that.
Yeah, because you have to like hook it around and angle it in there and stuff like that.
You know what's annoying is trying to remove that cooler when you have a GPU installed at the top slot, because sometimes trying to like angle it to get it off the bottom
to get it to unhook
rung is interferes. The cooler just smacks into your GPU. And it's kind of annoying. But thank you very much for the donation, Carmos. Next up, we've got Tronoxis once again. Gaming, $5 fine. Twitter source /Tronoxis_gaming to see the build. Tronoxis_gaming if you would like to see random dude on the internet's build.
Tronoxis.
We cannot guarantee that you won't see, I don't know, midget clown porn or something. I don't know.
We haven't vetted this.
No, we have not. So proceed with caution. All right, Andrew Schweier, 5 Canadiers. All right, if the CPU's dead, it's dead. Also changed my mind on the Phoenix cooler. We'll probably use the Fractal Expandable AIO because it's cheaper. Yes, the Celsius coolers have been very well reviewed for the most part, and I use them pretty frequently in builds from time to time. So yeah, that's a great solution. I don't think there's any red flags there. So
it's got a thicker radiator too.
Thicker radiator, very nice cable management as well. Jack Wilkins, 10 Australiers. Yo, just picked up the Bitwit desk mat. Heyo. Nice. How does it function as a beer coaster? Should I be worried about any possible spillage? Cheers from Straya. Sorry. I have not really tested it as a beer coaster, but you know,
I've used these to put drinks on. They're
better than putting it on
rubber,
your wood.
So it dries.
Yeah.
It doesn't leave much of a stain.
No.
Or like a watermark.
Right.
In my experience. So
yeah,
they work good.
So coaster approved. I mean, go for it. Put all your beers on them. MB67, $13.37. As always, Kyle, I was thinking about your earlier discussion on being 21 years old and wanted to say that both you and Paul are still kids to me. Enjoy life. 21 for me, 88 was during the Reagan presidency. See, that means nothing to me. Like, for me, 88 was just, I mean, I wasn't conscious, really. I was a baby. I was an infant. And then maybe like 92 was like that. The only thing that like 1992 means to me is Nintendo NES. It's like I had that placed in front of me, the controller put in my hands.
In 92 you had the original NES?
Yes.
You're a little behind the curve.
Well, I was too young before that to even play video games.
I think 92 was when Super Nintendo actually came out.
Right, but my dad wanted to start me on the original roots of gaming consoles. So he bought me an NES, and then I scaled up beyond that eventually. But NES was the first console I ever played. I think it was in 92. Yes, it had been out for a while then.
Monty 1940 said that the Super Nintendo released in 91.
Yeah, so yes, I was a little bit behind the curve, but I think because I was so young that he wanted to introduce me to a more simplified console. Because you scaled up, right? From the NES to the SNES, you had a few more buttons. You had the trigger the trigger buttons and stuff.
The bumpers.
Yep. So, and I had the cool NES. I had the top loader. Remember the top loader? Not the one not the original box that you went in, but the one that was actually a top loader, like the like the SNES. Almost.
Original Nintendo?
Yes. For the original SNES, original NES.
Knockoff bootleg version.
No, it was not a bootleg version. It was awesome. It was like the compact. It was like the PlayStation portable version of it.
Wow.
Anyway, let's move on to Trinity Sloan. $5. Here's number 3. Kyle, where's the Stack Attack video that Paul mentioned in his 420 vid? Or am I blind and not seeing it? I just finished editing Stack Attack just before we went live for the show.
So soon.
It took me 15 hours to edit, just saying. And it is...
Chris was editing.
Nope, I edited that.
Oh.
I edited it all day Monday, and I finished it today. It turned out wonderfully, and it's already up live. People have already been watching it on FLOATPLANE, if you'd like to check that out.
So go sign up for FLOATPLANE.
Description in the YouTube link below, or you can wait a week, and it'll be up then on YouTube. So it's very funny.
So on YouTube it'll be
very, very funny.
Later this week?
Yes.
Okay.
Later this week or early next week. One of the two. Tanner Wortham, $10. I'm from Alaska. Forgot to mention that.
Oh.
I have another question, though. Going to build my girlfriend a PC for streaming. What would you upgrade from your budget build, as we have a bigger budget?
Tanner, for streaming right now, you definitely want one of the 6-core Ryzen CPUs. You can even go with an 8-core Ryzen CPU if you have that
cash.
The cash or if it's worth it to you. But for right now, I would consider a 2600 or 2600X. Maybe go with the X, actually, with the 2600, because you get a slightly better CPU cooler. Or go with the 2600 if you're planning on getting an aftermarket CPU cooler, as long as you're okay with voiding your AMD warranty, apparently.
As we've learned.
But yeah, definitely streaming and gaming at the same time. This has been tested by Gamers Nexus pretty thoroughly, and they've had pretty good testing methodology for that.
Yep.
It's a much better experience for your viewers.
Yes.
Because
you can stream at a higher quality.
Yeah, you can stream at higher quality.
And still maintain a good gameplay experience for you.
Yeah.
While you're gaming.
So consider that 2600, 2600X if you're going for a 6-core, or the 2700 or 2700X if you're going for an 8-core.
Yes.
And then, of course, you're going to need to pair that up with the graphics card, and that's probably going to be where your biggest budget hit comes in. Yes. But just depends on what you're able to find there.
Get one of those
combat boxes. What are they called to get the combat crates?
Combat crates. Although that's first gen Ryzen.
A combat crate might be a reasonable solution for you.
Yeah.
You'll lose a little bit of performance off the top end because you're not doing with the 2000 series from Ryzen, but it's not that much.
So small.
And if you need a CPU, a motherboard, and graphics card, it is a pretty reasonable price for all those 3 things.
Most def. Thanks, Tanner.
Thank you,
Matt
Tanner.
Bond, $5. Thanks for the awesome content, Kyle. Paul, finish the damn HCPC already.
Working on it, Matt. I've made progress.
Perhaps by 2020, we'll see Paul's HTPC in the flesh.
I've done things.
Don't you think by the time you finally show your HTPC, it'll be time to upgrade it?
Possibly.
It'll be like maybe 2 generations old.
That's been my plan the whole time.
Oh! Maybe you guys are in for more of a treat than you anticipated. You'll just have to wait 5 years. Dexter2433, $5. Thanks for the awesome info and updates on what is going on in the PC world. You are welcome. I'd also suggest
very welcome, Dexter.
Watching other tech shows too, because they might deliver the news more coherently than we do. But I'm glad we're entertaining at the very least.
All the information you need to know, you can Find right here.
That's right.
That's all you need.
Thomas Lukens, $5. If I send you guys the best root beer ever, will you drink it during Awesome Hardware? Yes. It is beer after all. Yes.
I love root beer.
I love root beer. It's one of my favorite sodas.
If you guys want to send us stuff, our P.O. boxes are listed in the description
of our videos.
Mine's on YouTube. Mine's on my video. Kyle's is on Kyle's videos.
Yep.
Just renewed my P.O. box, actually.
I thought you said just for nudes.
No, I renewed it. I
paid, like your P.O. box
I paid money, so
is just for nudes.
I just renewed.
Got it.
Renewed, like RENUDE. That's
whatever. However you want to cover it up, man. It's fine. It's fine. I don't care. I'll love you either way.
Just renooked. Never mind.
Oh boy. Stephen Hill.
Steven.
$10. So we went from wired phones to wireless phones, and now we're back to having telephone lines. I just paid $10 to make a bad joke. What has my life come to? Cheers. Stephen.
He's talking about the China thing?
Yep, I believe so.
It's a telephone line.
Telephone line. Stephen, your bad jokes are always welcome here.
Yeah.
We won't fault you for them because we make them on the reg.
True.
L. Abraham, $5. What's up, guys? What the F is up with Hotline? Also, your recommendation for an E-mount macro lens. Hotline is... I haven't really touched it, to be honest, since the leak. It's just sitting there. But I have posted an update video as to exactly what happened and walking everyone through my exact experience of discovering it and what happened as far as how everything went so ballistically wrong. That's on FLOATPLANE right now. There's probably 6 videos on FLOATPLANE right now that you have not seen on YouTube.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
We're pretty ahead of schedule right now.
You're getting really ahead of yourself.
It's usually not, quite literally, it's usually not like that, but that is also one of the videos, so you can check that out. Description below. JCMP Technology Services, $5. Kyle only gets $5 because he gets my FLOATPLANE money. Speak of the devil. Well,
I guess I need to get on that FLOATPLANE.
I'm cool with that.
That FLOATPLANE train.
That FLOATPLANE plane. Hop on the plane wagon.
Hop
on the plane wagon, Paul.
I want to start talking about the FLOATPLANE train though, because I think that would be fun.
FLOATPLANE train. I'm just imagining a plane on a train.
Everyone get on the FLOATPLANE train.
Yeah, why not? Early adopters.
That's what I'm saying.
Fuck yeah.
Rick Sanchez,
€5 or GBP. Sorry, didn't mean to confuse the two. Does FX and Sandy Bridge have any life left, or are we all going to have to bite the bullet and buy a new board and CPU? It's memory cost. Memory cost that kills me.
Yes.
You're gonna have to bite the bullet, bro.
I'd say Sandy Bridge has a little bit more life than FX if you're overclocking. If you can get your Sandy Bridge around 4.4, 4.5 gigahertz, it's still pretty reasonably good.
Yeah.
But you know,
your days are numbered though.
All these processors and stuff, the computer you put together now, in 4, 5, 6 years, will reach a point where it is no longer functional for the things that we want to do with it right now.
Right.
And that's a good thing. We must remember this is a good thing. If the tasks that we use our computers for didn't continually become more difficult for the computers to do, then there would be no reason for the manufacturers to make new products to build the computers, and we would not have this continual cycle of new computer parts to build, to do fancy new things and all that kind of stuff.
This is true.
This is the give and take. Yes, you need to buy new stuff every so often, but that new stuff can do new and fancier things than the older stuff could do.
Right.
And often it's a pretty huge jump, especially if you're waiting 5, 6 years per upgrade cycle. So
yeah,
you will find if you're upgrading from an FX series AMD processor or a Sandy Bridge Intel processor and you jump to current generation, you'll be like, wow, I didn't think it was going to be this much of a difference in my experience, but it is, especially if you go from if you upgrade to like an SSD as well and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, eventually you have to bite the bullet. But I do not blame you if, at least for right now, you're holding off until hopefully middle or later this year, when we will hopefully see memory prices normalize. Because
hopefully by the end of this year.
Still pretty expensive, and those are one of those commodity markets that ebb and flow, and we've been on a ebb for a while. I don't know which.
I don't know which
is which, but it's been really expensive for a while, so it should hopefully dip back down at some point.
Yeah.
Too. All right.
So those are all the donations. We do have some Johnson shout-outs, starting with Justin H. Thank you very much for picking up a Bitwit Overclock mug. I love you.
Nathaniel B. from Utah. A Johnson for you. Got the Star Wars RGB Everything shirts. I'm sorry. That was a mug. That was a mug.
Okay.
Star Wars RGB Everything mug.
I'll forgive you.
And the stainless steel thumbscrew bottle opener.
Nathaniel gets a double Johnson for also picking up a Rip Gamepad shirt and a fidget spinner.
Sexy.
Hell yeah.
Eric S. from North Carolina. A Johnson to you for picking up that thumbscrew beer set. The glass and the opener.
Mr. Jack picked up a Bitwit gaming desk mat. Again, one of my favorites. Thank you very much, sir. Johnson.
And finally, James or J. K. from Illinois or Florida. This is very
Illinois.
Wherever you're from, Mr.
I got a James too.
Mysterious.
James, Illinois.
Or Florida.
Oh. Huh.
It's all right. Wherever
I always go for the build. Whoever's paying for it gets it. Whoever's paying for it.
Wherever you're from, Jay. Thank you for your order. He got a couple English pub glasses from me.
James, you got an RGB Everything shirt. Awesome hardware. Thank you.
Lovely.
And then a couple more here. Ben, picking up a desk mat. Johnson to you, Ben.
Johnson.
And Brandon gets a Johnson finally for getting a Words in a Circle 20-ounce Tall Boy Imperial pint glass. Yes! Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. This is episode... You know, I was walking down the hall today in my building here, and this girl was sitting down on the couch. She goes, nice glasses. Because I was carrying both of these glasses to wash them out for us when you got here.
Yeah.
I was walking, and she's like, nice glasses. And I thought immediately, like, she must really like my I was thinking she was talking about these glasses. I was like, oh, thanks. And then, like, as I was washing them out in the sink, I was like,
talking about those glasses.
She was talking about these glasses. Oh, okay. Well, that's fine. You know.
Here. I discovered...
Now I'm more self-conscious about these glasses.
I discovered a cool thing that you can do with Kyle's glasses.
You did.
Since they are they're shaped kind of like a can, like aluminum
a tall boy can.
So if you're pouring a can of beer into one of these, you can actually go completely inverted.
Yep, and leave it there.
And it'll sit there.
Yep, like it'll just do a self-pour. That's a feature.
Yep. Totally on purpose.
By design. By design. Thinking outside the box. But that is pretty much it, guys. We do have a Rage awesome shout-out, don't we?
Theoretically, possibly,
this
maybe.
This is from Femme Ivoire. Femme_Ivoire. I wish I knew how to pronounce that properly. But I'm going to go there right now and see that she is currently streaming The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and she has 45 viewers. If we can turn that into 450, we may very well see her mind blown into pieces on stream.
This is who we are. This is who we are raiding.
Yeah, we're about to raid the shit out of this girl. Right, okay, so please blow the shit out of Femme_Ivoire.
IVOIRE.
You can go there now.
Look, she's already getting awesome hardware raids.
Oh,
so tell her we sent you.
Do it.
Thanks for watching this episode, guys.
Do timestamps for if you're watching this on YouTube. Timestamps would be very much appreciated. Yeah. Thank you in advance, and I love you all. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.